are all unique and have our own personal story. So dive in with me and let's get to know some extraordinary people. This week's episode, I sit down with my dear friend, Ashley Huston. We dive in and talk about mental health and how each of us cope with our life's challenges. I hope you enjoy the episode. Okay, so we are here with Ash. She is the podcast expert. This is her second within the last month.
Yeah, expert.
I am excited to have Ashley on here for a number of reasons. She's a dear friend of mine. I've known for well over 10 years. And you were one of the very first people that befriended me when I moved to Gilbert, Arizona.
I don't remember that, but
you were so nice.
You were easy to be friends with.
Why, thank you very much. But you were so nice. Honestly, you were one of the very first to befriend me. And I just have always loved being around you. I don't see you that often because now you live in Flagstaff.
It's true.
But I have wanted to have you on here. Well, guess what? There's another great podcast out there called Word Vomit that your sister-in-law does. And
plug for her.
Yes.
Plug for Word Vomit.
Seriously, I've really enjoyed her podcast.
I think you might, if you find her on Instagram, it's Word Vomit, the podcast.
Yes, I follow her.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, you were recently interviewed on her podcast.
I was.
And I was blown away. Loved the episode. I loved how real, how raw, organic the conversation was. And you're just, what I love about you, Ashley, is you just say it how it is. You don't shy away from anything. And that's refreshing.
I think there's some old ladies at church that I used to teach in Relief Society. And I got a complaint that I was too open with my problems.
Oh my.
I was like, well, I'm not going to stop. Sorry.
Well, no. And for those listeners that don't know what Relief Society is, it is a class for women in the Mormon church.
Yeah.
But yeah, you are awesome. Thanks. So I knew I had to get you on here. So thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
So you know what this is all about.
I do. I've been listening to it and you've had some good ones.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you, you're so nice. Thank you for that compliment, by the way. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Would you consider your glass half full or half empty?
Well, I think right now I would say half full. But the last year and a half has been, my husband's gone through like a major bout of depression. And so for a while, I think I kind of was in this phase of like, why is this happening to us? For a long time, actually. And even my aunt had to kind of call me out on it once. She's like, you're way too negative. You're never going to, if you keep thinking this way, it's just going to get worse and worse. And that was kind of a wake-up call to me.
Was it hard to hear?
Yes. I think I tend to be, and we've been talking about this before, but I tend to want to seem like things are perfect. And it's really hard for me to take criticism, I'm finding. So I wanted to be like, who are you to tell me that I'm not being, well, you do this, or not with her, and not just her, but like anybody. I want to be like, well, you do this and you do that. So shut up,
Yeah. No, I tend to do that. When I get the criticism, I go into defense mode first.
Totally.
Right? But then it's like you got to kind of talk yourself out of it. And okay, yeah, you might have a point. It hurts to hear, but you got a good point.
My psychiatrist, we just talked about this before I came to your house. If you just sit and let the person talk, if you wait till the very end, usually it will resolve those thoughts you have of being defensive. That's what he told me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. How do you get your brain to work that way? So somebody's starting to give you the criticism, right? Constructive criticism. But how do you not go into defense mode right away, right? And just be able to listen to what they have to say.
Right.
And before you, I don't know, that's something to think about.
Do you know what me and my husband are trying to do?
Let's
this
hear.
Sounds so cheesy, but we're trying to learn how to do this because he's totally an introvert, logical, methodical. And I'm an extrovert, and I just talk and talk and talk, and I'm an outward processor. So what we do if we have something like big to talk about, we'll email each other.
Oh, okay.
Like if I have something I'm like, this is bugging me or something, so that each of us have time to like
think about it.
But then we come and talk about it.
Yeah.
So
I don't think that's cheesy.
So neither of us are like, what the heck? Like, why are you saying that? You know, and it's been harder for me than for him to do that because, yeah.
I don't think that's cheesy at all.
It's working though.
And I should probably try to adopt that. My problem is I'm a reactor. So I just start spitting this stuff out, right? And I got a little attitude a lot of times, and I just get a little heated. Yeah. And I say things that I end up regretting 2 minutes later. Yeah. So that's not a bad thing.
Actually, though, I'm the opposite. I get silent. Like, I get quiet because I'm codependent. I don't want to rock the boat. So I don't. That's interesting. I just want it to be back to normal. So I tend to not tell things that bug me.
That is so interesting. You say you're codependent.
I do.
I'm codependent.
Yeah.
We talked about this before, but Codependence No More. Fantastic book. You're going through it right now.
I'm reading it. There's a new, she wrote that in the 80s. There's a workbook that came out. I didn't even look at what year it was, but there's a whole workbook now that you can do it.
Oh, I need to pull that out. I actually have that. I need to pull it back out. Yeah. But I have those. That book changed my life.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I want everything to be calm. I'm a fixer. I want everything to be perfect, everybody to be on good terms, not just me, but everybody around me, right?
Yeah.
And there's reasons behind that. And I've learned what these reasons are in the last few months as I've gone to therapy and trying to figure out why I'm this way. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's a thing called boundaries. And anyway, my thing is, I react. And I will spit things out, but I'm always the first to apologize because I want it resolved. But I don't just apologize just to apologize so we can move on. I genuinely feel bad. And then I am always the first to apologize. My husband is so stubborn that he doesn't apologize. No, he does.
See, and my husband is good at apologizing, but I will apologize even if I don't think I did anything wrong because I just want...
Yes. That's the fixer. That's okay. And I do the same thing. Usually, like I said, when I apologize, I genuinely apologize. Yeah. But I will genuinely apologize for something that I didn't even do. Right? Yeah. My therapist told me, you don't do that. That is throwing yourself under the bus. Mm-hmm. And that is so true. Seriously. And I found myself apologizing for my kids, like just in situations at the park or whatever, like apologizing for my kids when, no, my kid didn't do anything wrong, but I'm going to apologize because I just want everything to be.
Because you care what people think.
I care what people think. Exactly. I have that problem. Exactly. I care what people think. I want to be a fixer. And then what am I doing? Essentially, I'm throwing my kid under the bus. Mm-hmm. And that's not fair. And that's not right. So something to work on.
It is. Okay. I'm right in the throes of all that.
I'm telling you. We've all got our issues, right?
Codependency, man.
Yeah, codependency it's a real thing.
And if you don't know what that means, go look it up. And most people have codependency to some level.
Yeah. Yeah, look it up and go read the book, Codependence No More, because it's very good.
Maybe you'll get a sponsor out of this.
There you go.
Codependent No More.
Exactly. But you said something, you care what people think. And you might, a lot of times I've even said, I don't care what people think. Yeah, I do. Like, I care what people think. And I wish I didn't care so much about what people think.
Totally.
With this very podcast. I remember I was so nervous to release. I was so excited to release the first episode to go live on this. Sure. But I was a little nervous because I thought, oh, wait, not necessarily with the first episode, but episodes I had already recorded. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, shoot, I'm totally going to offend this group of friends. Mm-hmm. I'm totally going to offend this other group of people from my church. Or, this group of people from my work are going to think I'm a complete idiot. You know what I mean? And I was so caught up in that. And then I'm like, you know what? Who cares? Like, honestly, who cares? Because I'm doing this for me and I'm bringing people on that I think are fascinating. And I think everybody is going to be able to get something from one of my guests, right? Totally. That's why I bring them on. So that's been a process for me. So that's been hard for me just to make myself vulnerable in getting this podcast out there. But I'm having so much fun and I've had some great people. Okay.
You're doing a great job, by the way.
Thank you very much.
I've liked all the ones that have come out so far.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
So you mentioned the last year and a half. Let's go back to the original question where I asked if your glass is half full, half empty. Year and a half, your husband has suffered from a bout of depression. He has. Is this just something that he's recently had to confront develop over the last year and a half? Or is this something that's triggered from, I don't know, you tell me.
Something. Well, we're finding out as he's getting help. Well, and I should back up. I also deal with mental health issues. 3.5 years ago, I was diagnosed with something called cyclothymia. I remember what it's called now, which is a milder version of bipolar 2. So basically, you're more depressed than you are up, but like it's milder. It's not like I'm so down I can't function. And when I get high, it's not like I can't sleep or I think I'm a superhero. It's just, so when I cycle high, it's like I can get my whole house clean. I can do projects. I'm going to like, my life is amazing. I'm going to do all this stuff, but I always know that I'm going to crash after that. So over the years I learned like, okay, you're doing good today. You better get a bunch of crap done because you're not going to function in a few days. So I was diagnosed with that 3.5 years ago and got help, got on medication, have been doing good with that since. Medication just helps me function more normal. So we thought I was the only one that had those issues, and he's been super supportive. Well, 1.5 years ago, he was doing juvenile prosecuting, and he had a case where a 13-year-old boy had sexually abused a 4-year-old. And at the time, our daughter was 4, and we've learned since a lot of times when things that happen to you, when you have a kid that turns that age, it can get triggered. And then having this case, and he'd even had other cases similar, it just triggered some things that had gone on in his childhood that he'd just kind of, it's like he remembered they happened, but he'd just kind of pushed them out. Yeah. And that just opened the floodgates for like 1.5 years. Not just that, just, it was really hard. And because I have such bad codependent issues, it like spiraled me out of control, and it was a little rough. So yeah, during all that, I remember feeling like, why is all this crap happening? We've been through so much other stuff. Like, can we just have like a year of normal, things like that? But I don't know. I think I've just since learned like stuff happens to people. Like everyone has crap that happens to them. I don't know.
Everyone, even the people that you see on Instagram that have these perfect, they're curated posts and everything is just perfect. It's not always the case, right?
Definitely not. And I think I used so much of my energy to make it seem like we were still doing okay too, that it just was exhausting. And now he's doing good. Like he's doing good.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, even my psychiatrist said, like, it's like when you're studying for finals and you're just like killing yourself, and then like you take the finals and then you get sick. Yeah. Because it's like you've used so much energy to do that, and then your body just can't like do it anymore. Yeah. So that's kind of been how it's been for me the last little while. Just, oh my gosh, I have so much stuff now I need to deal with, but I couldn't do it before I was medication because I was way worse. I don't know. Yeah.
Just a big cycle.
But that's cyclothymia. That's what I have. That's all cycle.
Yeah, that's interesting. But that's nice that you both are very supportive of each other.
Definitely.
You both are very much aware of these issues. And you're learning how to cope with them.
For sure. I feel like, I know other people that deal with stuff. I even have another friend who's got full-blown bipolar. Her husband, like, has no clue. And I see how it puts, like, a huge strain on their marriage. And not that mental illness doesn't anyways, but I feel like being married to someone who's supportive and tries to learn about it. And, like, I had him read this book a few years ago about a woman who has bipolar, and she just kind of explained how her brain works and what she's done to, like, thrive, have her life thrive now, being bipolar. And I remember I begged him to read it. I'm like, please read this, because she can explain perfectly what's going on. And he read it, and I remember him coming in like emotional and just being like, I had no idea. Aww. But it was so good because he finally could understand, and even now more him going through it. And we know that both of us have good intentions. It's not like we're ever trying to like make each other mad and things like that, but just trying to work through like how to function. Both of us having
Well, and then it's hard.
Mental illness.
Yeah, both of you have a mental illness, and then you have kids to raise, right? You've got 2 little ones.
Definitely, yeah.
And
that even makes it so much harder, I feel like.
Well, yeah, because don't you want to protect your kids and keep them in this little bubble, and you don't want them to know. But kids are so resilient anyway. But kids are so aware, is what I was trying to say. Kids are so aware, and they pick up on stresses. They pick up on a lot of that.
For sure,
it's hard.
We've actually
have you talked to your kids about this?
That's what I was just gonna say. I'm like, I don't know. We probably should talk to somebody about this, but I'm like, we have been super open about it with our kids. I mean, to a 5-year-old and 8-year-old level.
You're bringing it down to their level.
But I'm hoping in that I mean, they're both, it runs like crazy on my side, and my husband has it, and probably other people in his family, but like, they're very susceptible to it genetically. So our hope is that if we're open about it, if they start feeling that at some point, it's not going to be a huge deal. Like,
right. And that
they can just come and be like, I feel this way. And we're like, okay. I mean, I've even already taken my kids to see a child psychologist for stuff. And
it's awesome.
Yeah. So it's like they have a doctor. We have,
That is so good.
And I don't want to unnecessarily put them on medication and things.
Right. Exactly. But you know what? You're teaching them.
Susceptible.
Well, you're being honest with them, obviously. And honesty is very key with your kids.
Yeah.
But you're going to give them that confidence to know that's okay. If they're struggling with something, that is okay, and come and talk to you. Yeah. And then you're going to work through it. They don't have to carry that burden themselves.
For sure.
There's a way to work through it.
It's not a character flaw to have issues.
Yes. It's not.
It's not.
It's in our genes.
When I learned that was a huge breakthrough for me. Like, I'm not a bad person because I have mental health issues. Like,
can you go back and pinpoint that moment when you realized, okay, because you suffered from depression, you felt the highs and lows throughout your life, but can you go back and pinpoint that time when you realized, okay, you know what? This is not in my control. I've got mental health issues.
Yes, there's 2 things. So it was probably about 4 years ago, a few months before I got officially diagnosed. In church, we're paired up with other women to visit them, other women to make sure they're okay, so that it doesn't fall on just the leaders, visiting teaching.
Yeah. It's basically a support for women.
Yes.
A women's support group type. Okay.
So I got paired with a girl that I hadn't really known her before. And come to find out, she was a psychiatry nurse practitioner.
Oh, wow.
And so I jokingly, the first time we talked, you need to help me. I'm crazy, And then we went to go visit one of the women we were friends with. And the second one, she was not home. We'd made an appointment to go see her, and she ended up not being home. So we just started talking, and she's like, no, tell me some of your problems. Tell me what you mean. And I'm the type, I don't want to burden you with my problems. But she's like, I like this stuff. That's why I got into this field. Exactly. So we ended up talking for 2.5 hours. And she's like, girl, you are not depressed. You have bipolar.
Wow.
And I remember being like, no, psycho people have bipolar. I had known somebody before, in a different ward I went to at church, and not psycho ward. For those of you that aren't Mormon, that's just what we call our congregations. Anyway, so in a different congregation I was in,
right.
I knew a woman that had bipolar, but she was extreme. There's a whole spectrum of bipolar, just like autism or anything. You can be super mild or super bad. Mm-hmm. So that was the first time I really was like, whoa. And then she helped me find a psychiatrist, and my brother, who is actually a psychiatrist now, he helped me find where I'm going now. But then I had a sister-in-law. She's now my ex-sister-in-law, but she had given me this book that I was talking about earlier. It's called A Guide to Thriving with Mental Illness. And it's just a girl that lives in Gilbert, and her name's Mikkel. I can't think of her last name at the moment. I haven't read it in a few years, but reading her book changed my life. And it's in there where she talks about that it doesn't make you a bad person to have this. You're not incomplete. basically, like, if you can't function, it's not because you're lazy and a bad person. It's because there's something wrong in your brain that needs to be fixed, basically.
And it shouldn't define you.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think I've just, since then, it was like liberating. And I've talked to people since, and it can be hard to find out you have mental health issues. But like, for me, it was liberating because it was kind of like, oh, that's why I'm this way. That's why I have this issue. And then since, trying to figure out ways to function well. Mm-hmm. So I have to do things like, if I've worked a lot for like 3 days in a row, I have to have a day where I'm a little more like chill.
Yeah.
I think I went off on a huge tangent here.
No, you didn't.
Because we were talking about my husband.
No, this is good. No, this is really good.
Yeah. Anyway, so I've just, and I mean, I'm not perfect at it. I'm still going through.
You're learning.
Figuring out I care too much what people think of me. So that causes my cycles to be worse. And yeah. So it's like trying to come up with plans to be my best self.
Exactly. Be your best self. But what I like about you, Ashley, is that you own it. You own who you are.
I own it.
And you'll talk about it. And that's refreshing because a lot of people struggle with mental health or just depression or just so many things. And we all struggle with things, right? And it's so, I mean, mental health is so predominant. I mean, that is a real thing.
It is.
And you shouldn't have to carry that on your own. Like, that is a big burden. And that's something so heavy to work with.
For sure.
And there are resources out there. And there are so many people just like you that are going through the same thing. And so
there are. I don't think I'm any worse than a lot of people. It's just mine has a diagnosis. And something my husband just said in church, he said, and this was applying to church, but I think it can be the world in a whole. It's like church is a hospital. You know, they kind of refer to church as a hospital for sick people where they need to get better. Mm-hmm. But he's like, I've never been to a hospital where nobody goes there and doesn't talk about their symptoms. So why are we not talking about it?
Exactly.
And that can apply to not church.
Right.
It can apply to the world.
Right.
So I just always feel like if
That's a good point.
and I think I'm just a talker anyways, if I talk about it, oh my gosh, if you knew the things I knew about people that other people don't, because I talk about my issues.
Yeah.
People open up to you big time.
Yeah, and it's hard to open up and it's hard to be vulnerable. But when you're having that conversation with someone else and they're showing that vulnerability, it's a lot easier. And you're just a delight, Ashley. So, I mean, anybody can sit and just have hours of conversation with you.
I should say, and I want to recognize, though, that, like, I think for some reason that just comes more naturally to me, and it's okay if it doesn't for other people. And I see that it's hard for people to do that.
Absolutely.
So just because it's not hard for me doesn't mean
that's a very good
there's
point.
Anything wrong with you if you can't do that.
Absolutely. That is a very good point.
Yeah. I just am a talker. I could talk to the wall. Like, for real.
You need your own podcast. Seriously.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. So you're young. We're the same age, roughly. Yeah. How old are you?
35.
Do you mind me asking? Oh, I'm a lot older than you.
No, you're not. Like a year?
2.
Oh, geez.
Anyway, but for your age, and I hope you're okay with me saying this, is I feel like you've gone through a lot. And I would imagine you kind of had to, over the last 10 years that I've known you, you've gone through a lot of difficult things and you've pretty much had to grow up fast. Right? I mean, you've just confronted a lot of life experiences that have not been very easy and that have been very challenging.
I think so. I mean, actually, for a little while, I remember I have this good friend who we were talking about it, and she's been through some hard things. And I was like, yeah, but everybody goes through really hard things, lots of hard things. And she's like, I think you've gone through a little more than the average, like, couple. But I'm like, really? I don't know. I mean, we have been through hard things, but
are you?
Don't lots of people?
Yeah, we all. Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody goes through hard things. But I just think in those short, I mean, you figure, how long have you and Mark been married? 11 years?
11 years, yeah.
That's not very long.
Yeah.
And you have been through a lot together.
Sometimes it makes me go, what's the next 11 years going to be? Oh, geez.
They're going to be blissful. Okay.
Okay. I'm just kidding.
So when people ask you, I'm just going to ask you, how many kids do you have?
We have 2 living children and one that passed away when he was 2 days old.
Okay. I asked you that question because I know other people that have had children and have lost them at a very young age. Okay.
Yes.
So sometimes it's hard. Like if I'm introducing so-and-so, she's got 5 kids. And then I'm like, wait, no, actually she's got 6, but 5 living. And that's just kind of a tricky situation. It could be a delicate situation sometimes. So can you talk to me about this? Why I asked you how many kids you have. Okay. So you said you have 2 living and 1 that passed.
Yes. So I think I tell people depending on the situation, and this is just my opinion, and everybody who's lost children is different. And I would never care if you were introducing me to somebody and you said you have 2 kids.
Right.
Because it's obviously someone I don't know, and who knows if I'll talk to them again. So that's kind of my thing. I'm like, if I'm talking to somebody and I know I'm never going to see them again, I'm not going to open that can of worms, for lack of better words. You know, it's not like I need to tell them the whole sob story, you know, but if it's somebody I know that I'm going to see again, like a new client or I do hair. So a new client or something, if they ask me how many kids I have, I'll tell them I have 3, 2 living, you know, and sometimes that we talk about it for a long time. Other times we don't. So, yeah, it all just depends on the situation. When he first passed away, I would tell everybody it didn't matter, but I know that I'm an outward processor. Like I have to talk about things to process them. So I think it was more for my benefit than theirs. Right. And you can make people uncomfortable pretty quick.
Well, so I mentioned earlier, you've been on another podcast, and I would recommend any listeners that are already fascinated with Ashley, which I'm sure you all are, to go and listen to her episode, because the podcast is called Word Vomit. And you really dive into a lot of detail around your firstborn and how he passed away soon after he was born. And you really dive into a lot of those details. And that was that was a hard thing to listen to, but it was a great thing to listen to. When I say it was hard thing for me to listen to, I was friends with you at the time. I knew you. It was around the time I was getting married, planning a wedding.
I was sad I was going to be in your wedding. Yes. I remember the day of your wedding, laying in my hospital bed, being like, this sucks. I just want to be there.
Oh. Yeah. Well, and I knew you were on bed rest, but looking back at that time, I didn't realize the severity of what you were going through. And just, you think, a lot of people just assume bed rest. Oh, how cushy. They get to lay in bed for 4 months and watch movies and just like eat. They're pregnant. They can eat what they want. That's just definitely not the case, right? No. But listening to this podcast, I was just amazed. I just remember thinking to myself, wow, I didn't realize all that she was going through. And I knew, obviously, what happened, with the birth, and I attended Miles' funeral. And so I knew what happened, but just everything you went through. So I won't make you rehash all of that. Oh, it's okay. But I encourage the listeners to go listen to this episode, because it was just, I love how just raw you were with this. So you fast forward 10 years. Miles would be 10 years old.
Yeah, he'd be 10 years old. So weird.
Yeah. So weird. Yeah, 10 years old. Do you ever find yourself looking like at church, right? And you look at the primary class of the 10-year-olds. Do you ever find yourself just watching kids in that age group and just envisioning or just thinking, wow, I would have a kid in this class?
Yes, I do. And we actually, my husband's brother, they had a baby like 6 weeks before Miles was born. And so he's like the same age. Wow. And I remember when he was a baby being super sad that they could have been little like best friends. But what's really cool is that nephew and Sam, my son, are best friends.
Really?
Even though they're like
What's
a year
the
and a half
age
apart.
Difference? A year and a half.
They are obsessed with each other. So what I used to think about and be sad about, I'm watching it with Sam. Yeah. So
that's really neat.
And then the only time I really think that now, because I'm years out from the pain of don't get me wrong. There are times it happens, but I mean, it's few and far between. I don't even think about it every day. Not even maybe once a month.
They say there's the saying, time heals.
For sure. And having more children for me heals. I think when I get the most bugged, which I realize is my issue because I'm being judgmental, is when people are what's the word? Things that don't really matter, they make a big deal about. I don't know, like...
Give me an example.
Okay, so I remember like right after having Miles, I mean, it could have been like 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. I was at church and I heard these 2 girls that had recently had babies complaining about like having such bad stretch marks after having a baby. And I wanted to go over there and be like, are you freaking kidding me right now? You have a healthy baby. Like, who cares if you got stretch marks? And I'm like, I got stretch marks and didn't bring my baby home.
And so I just want to give the listeners, I seriously am encouraging everybody to go listen to your episode on word vomit because
it's very detailed.
It's very detailed because people are going to be thinking, if you're like me, okay, now I want to know the whole story. I want to know everything, but just very high level. You said you didn't bring your baby home. You were in a hospital for how many weeks on bed rest?
Well, I was 2.5 in the hospital, like a month at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then she goes to the hospital, has this very tragic experience, and she comes home without a baby. Yeah. Not only did you get your stretch marks, but your scar wasn't your typical cesarean scar, right?
No. They cut me from my belly button to my pubic bone and all the way across.
Right. So
I have a nice looking stomach these days.
But you know what? Look what it's brought you, right?
It's all good.
Yeah.
I own it.
So I can understand when you hear a trivial thing complaining about the stretch marks.
Or it's like, not even just that, or anything in life. Like, I want to just be like, ugh.
Yeah.
And I do it too. It's
we
not
all
like...
do. We all get caught up on the trivial things. It's
I think when
nature.
It has to do with like birth is what... Pregnancy and birth is the biggest trigger for me to be like, oh, just shut up.
Understandably so. Yeah. I mean, this is your first experience carrying a baby and bringing somebody, like carrying a child and giving birth, right?
For sure.
I have to ask you. So Sam and Miles are 1.5 years apart. Mm-hmm. How was that? Was that a hard decision to say, okay, I'm ready to try again? Were you scared? Were you on pins and needles your whole pregnancy?
Yeah. So after we had Miles, I think the day he passed away, I told Mark, I'm like, don't even talk to me about having another kid for at least 3 years.
Wow.
And I think he felt the same way. Yeah. So it's not like, but it was literally, I think 8 months later. Yeah. 'Cause I got pregnant like the first month we were trying, but, all of a sudden it was like one day I was like, I'm ready to have a baby again.
Really?
It was the weirdest thing.
And a lot sooner than you had expected.
Yeah. So I talked to Mark and he's like, yeah, I think I'm ready too. So yeah, I obviously, Sam, I guess, just needed to come then because I got pregnant quick.
You had no issues with him.
I had, like, my blood pressure was a little bit high, but not anything. I mean, I think they would like have me come in a little, I can't remember, or they gave me a blood pressure thing at home, and if it got higher than whatever, I had to call them, but it never did. It was fine. I was a wreck during that whole pregnancy. A wreck. Like, it was bad.
Well, yeah. I mean, given your first experience.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So when you were in the hospital giving birth to Sam, being in the hospital, did that bring a lot of emotions back to the surface and just kind of some of the experiences that you had experienced in the hospital with Miles?
You want to know the crazy thing? Yeah. I had my C-section with Sam in the same OR, same room.
Really?
That I had Miles.
Wow.
Yeah. So I remember them wheeling me in there and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I thought it was going to be a big deal because I remember thinking about it before, what if I'm in the same room? And it was. Like, because I remember the way,
You're fine.
Like, the way they turned my bed and stuff for the first, because then I was like, well, maybe it's not the same one, but it was.
Wow.
It was completely different, though. Like, they talk about your baby you have after a baby being like your rainbow baby, is what they call it. And the second I heard him cry was like the best experience of my life. Like, and they brought him over and it was like, he was chubby and like full size and it was awesome. It was awesome. I didn't even care. Like, I was puking and like shivering and didn't even care. Wow. So I was like, and I did have to tell myself that during the pregnancy, like with Sam, this is a different pregnancy. You're going to have a good outcome. And I remember someone telling me, you need to envision yourself like giving birth and holding him for the first time. Because if you envision it, you know, like envision your future and it'll happen kind of thing. So I could picture myself having him and like holding him. Right. So I did that a lot. And I've even told a couple friends that have lost babies and then they're pregnant. I'm like, you just have to picture yourself, that baby coming out and them giving it to you. And it works.
Was it hard to do? Just because I just imagine myself, I tend to protect myself and just.
You know, I just had a totally different feeling. It's like I knew it was going to be fine. But I mean, then you still have moments of like panic where you're like, oh my gosh. Or if you don't feel a move, you know, for a little while, then you start freaking out. But I think you have that regardless of if you lost a baby.
Right.
But, and then he was born. He was like the perfect baby. Barely cried. Happy. He's still like the easiest kid. So, yeah. He's my rainbow baby through and through.
That's awesome. And then, Kay, how soon after did you decide, okay, we're doing this again?
Sam and Scout are 3 years apart because, don't get me wrong, I love being a mom, but I am not a baby person. And I think, honestly, I had PTSD from Miles and not... Like I couldn't breastfeed because it was like the pressure of my body being a baby's only like source of nutrition was way too much pressure for me after losing Miles. And I don't know, I just couldn't do it for a long time after that. And even when I felt like I was ready for Scout, it was like, I had to be told. It was like, Heavenly Father was like, you need to have another baby now. It wasn't like I was itching to have another baby.
Right. You just,
not at all.
You felt strongly, this is the time. This is when I needed to do it.
So she was born 3 years later when we lived in Omaha, Nebraska for my husband to be in law school. And I wasn't as nervous with her, but it was a little rougher. Like, I think with Sam, I was seeing like the perinatologists that had delivered Miles, and they were doing like ultrasounds all the time, and I had weekly appointments because I had to get like steroid shots and So with Scout, it was a little more, she knew my history, but she was just a little more like, it's fine, you know.
Yeah. And you're with a whole new set of doctors, and just a whole new environment.
Totally. And then she ended up having to be in the NICU for a week, and that triggered a bunch of stuff again. And
So why did Scout have to be in the NICU?
So when I had Miles, how they had to cut me, they didn't want me to go into labor with future babies because I guess it can contractions can like burst your uterus and you can bleed to death. So with Sam, they delivered him at like 36 and 4 days, and Scout was like 36 and 6 days. And with Sam, actually, they did a amniocentesis where they put the needle in your stomach to test the amniotic fluid, and he was ready, good to go, and so he was fine, but they didn't do that with Scout. And looking back, I'm like, why didn't I like insist on that? But I just figured, they say boys don't do as well in the NICU. They call it like wimpy white boy syndrome or whatever. So if you have a boy and he's white, they don't do as well usually in the NICU. So I'm like, oh, she's a girl. She'll be fine. And she's being born after Sam was gestationally, but she was not quite ready. So...
But today, she is a healthy little girl.
She is.
But what's interesting, talk about her diagnosis that she received when she was about, two and a half?
Uh-huh. Scout, she's like the funniest girl. But she was diagnosed with cerebral palsy when she was 2.5. And she has it very mild. Like, she functions totally normal. She just, like, in her left hand is called left spastic hemiplegia, so it like affects her left side. And on her it only manifests in her hand, so like she can't touch her pointer and her thumb together, and like her hand's just really weak. Like, she really wants to do the monkey bars, but I don't know if that'll happen because her hand's not strong enough. But funny thing, her other hand is so strong because of that.
She has to make up for it.
My husband calls it her claw. Like, she can get Sam in a headlock and he can't get out. And like, if she's like holding on to us and we're trying to get her off, it is hard for us to like pry her off.
Wow.
This is so strong.
So she's just a determined little thing. Nothing's going to slow this girl down.
She is Scout from To Kill a Mockingbird through and through. Determined, just tomboy. Yeah.
That's fun.
She's cute.
We've just heard a little glimpse, just a portion of the things that you have gone through over the last 11 years, just since you've been married, right? And I'm sure there's things, we've all gone through things in our childhood and good and bad. But I asked that question about the glass being half full or half empty because I just assumed you would say half full because you are just a very naturally optimistic, upbeat, happy-go-lucky person. What is it? What is it in you that, I mean, is it just in your blood? I mean,
honestly, this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. I do think I'm a positive person, but I'm realizing I have these codependent issues and like, I don't want to appear like I'm not doing good.
Yeah.
I have an issue with that. It's bad.
You just want to be strong. You don't want to be vulnerable and let people kind of have a little peek inside that it's like, you know what? Maybe some days I'm not that strong.
Even days I'm not doing good, I don't talk to people. So they don't see that, you know?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even being on medication for bipolar, you still have bad days.
Right.
You just have to learn how to manage it better.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, on days where I'm more down, I don't talk to people. I don't answer my phone.
Really? You just kind of
so
kind of
people are
shut
always
everybody
shocked.
out.
People are always shocked. And I'm like, yeah, because you don't see me when I'm not doing good. You
right.
know? And I mean, my husband sees it. And my kids. But
yeah.
He's good, though. He's very supportive.
And you talk to your kids about this?
We do. When my husband, we go through it differently. Like I've never really had a day where I can't function if I have to do something, I can still do it. I might do it like half-assed, but you're still going to do it. I can still do it.
So there's not days where he just has to be home and you're just in bed.
No.
That's awesome.
I don't know how, but I'm starting to think maybe that's because I have this issue with people not seeing me a certain way. But I also realize you can't help that if you're real bad. Right. But my husband, when he's been going through this last year and a half, there were lots of days he couldn't function. Mm-hmm. Like lots of days that he couldn't function. Gratefully, his work has been amazing. Like they love him. He's got a great reputation there. And yeah, they've been awesome. But we couldn't hide that, like from our kids, you know, they can tell that daddy's not normal, you know? And I think we both have just agreed, like he has kind of a harder past too. Like, I mean, age appropriate, but it's like, that's how you help kids not make the same dumb mistakes, I think, or help kids not feel shame about things. Or if both my kids are susceptible to having mental illness, when we both have it, you know, we don't want it to be this huge defining thing. Like if Sam ends up having depression, okay, bud, well, let's go take you to the doctor and get you on meds and get you therapy to learn how to cope. You know?
Exactly.
Things like that. So,
because most likely when you're in school and you're sitting in a library, a good chunk of the people sitting right next to you, little do you know, they're going through the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's so predominant.
And it's just, why not talk about it? I don't know.
Right. But it's refreshing. It's liberating to be able to talk about things.
And it takes work, I think, for some people, but yeah.
Well, I honestly, for me, I feel like just over the last year is when I've really been able to start opening up and talking about things too, because I was that person that would only post. I mean, I think everybody does. You're not going to get on social media and just start airing out your dirty laundry, right?
Until I started,
some people do.
I started Instagram about
I love that. That was awesome. But I'm just saying, like, I only would share the positive, the good things happening. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, we all have our ups and downs, but learning how to talk about it for me has become very liberating. Totally. And it's been a great thing. And there's no shame in it. No shame in it.
It doesn't define you.
Right.
It's not a character flaw.
Absolutely not. It's not. It's not a character flaw. It's not a moral failure. I mean, this is just, it's who you are. And embrace it, and and you just become stronger.
I agree.
So from all your ups and downs, I'm not just focusing on the bad, the good and the bad, would you do it all over again? If you could choose to go through a lot of these experiences all over
I guess
again.
I should say I'm glad it's happened because I've grown from everything, but I don't want to, like when we had like our 11th, we just had our 11th anniversary. So when we had our 10th, I was like thinking about myself like on our wedding day and things like that. And I'm like, oh geez, if only that girl knew what the next 10 years were going to be. And I mean, it's not like my marriage is good, but it's just all the stuff that's come into it. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
But,
Everything you have to confront.
I just think the biggest key is like you have to be able to communicate about it. I don't know.
Right.
And work at it. But
what would you say was the biggest lesson you learned from going through losing a child?
I talk about this a little bit in the other podcast I did, but just before that, my life was just like pretty normal. I thought I had gone through hard things, but not really. And I think I just didn't think, oh, bad things won't happen to me because I make good choices, dumb stuff like that. But going through that, I think it just helped me realize, oh, everyone goes through stuff and it's almost like we have to grow. And to not like judge people when they aren't doing things or functioning the way you think they should, because you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what they've been through, And I mean, I think it's still something I always have to work on, but I think it's just helped me realize like, oh, they're probably not doing this thing they're supposed to be doing because there's something going on. Right. Or it's not even my job to like think about that. Like, but it's not my job to judge that about people.
Exactly. And unfortunately, we tend to be quick to judge, that's just human nature.
It is.
We're very quick to just form an opinion, make a quick judgment without knowing all the facts. We don't realize the obstacles that have that they've gone through.
Yep. Another thing that's helped me not judge people, or even if I start to like shut it down. My sister-in-law said this to me once. She's like, when someone tells you something or you see something, it's just information. It's not your job to put it in a good category or a bad category. It's just information. So I try to think of that when I'm like, why is he doing it? Why is somebody doing that? Or why are they not doing that? It's like, it's just information. It's not my job to decide if it's good or bad.
Exactly. And not only is it information, is it fake news? Or is it real news?
True.
You know what I mean? We hear a lot of that these days. Yeah. But seriously, it's information, but where's it coming from? A lot of times maybe it is factual information, but that's I like that.
Or it's just not my job to get involved with what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe I'm talking more like on a personal level, maybe not like politically.
No. And I was talking about that, but I'm even saying just day to day, like some, gossip or just like somebody's version of a story or
why did that person make that choice?
Exactly.
Well, I don't know. We don't know what that person's been through or how they were raised or why they're choosing that. Everybody's trying to do the best they can and coping the best they can.
Right.
So, I don't know. I try to live by that. It's not always easy to do that.
No, it's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah.
Okay, being a mother to a darling little girl and a son too. So this doesn't just need to apply to your daughter, but to your both kids. If you could just give them one valuable lesson today that they will carry with them through the rest of their lives, that's a hard question, right?
It is.
Or just even a valuable lesson or just even a valuable attribute, something that they could just something positive and good that they could carry in their back pocket to get them through their lives, to make their lives just a little bit easier because it is a rough road out there.
Yeah. I think at least right now, I would probably teach them to just not care what people think, because I was going to say don't judge people, but I think you judge people when you care what other people think. I think they're connected. So if you can get to the point where you only care about not only care about yourself, or can do things without thinking about what other people are going to think.
Right.
That's so hard. But if I could somehow teach my kids to do that,
Right.
Oh,
It's a tough world out there, but I think that confidence is key.
for sure.
The other day, my daughter Cece was doing a little test at school, and she came home and said, "Oh, so-and-so was making fun of me because I only got 3 out of 5 right on this reading assessment on the computer." My first reaction
Mama
was,
bear.
"Oh, I'm so sorry, Cece," and just like that comforting, protecting. And she says, "I don't care."
That's awesome.
And I just remember thinking, oh man, I mean, obviously I want her to care about her schooling. Obviously, maybe she should care. Maybe she should care a little more about the schooling. But no, I mean, she's in 1st grade. But she was just comfortable with who she was. You know what I mean? She didn't let his negative remark, his teasing her,
I need to
make
learn
her
from
feel
her.
sad.
I need to learn from her.
I mean, a lot of kids are like that, right?
Oh, for sure.
But
My son, when was it? Oh, we live in Flagstaff, so it snows. He'd worn his snow boots to school, and I was taking him to school, and he started crying because he forgot to bring his tennis shoes because they had PE.
Oh.
And he was crying, and I'm like, but it's not a big deal. Like, I'll tighten them really tight so you can run. And he's like, but so-and-so's going to be bugged that I didn't bring. And I'm like, oh, hell. He's got my same issue. Shoot.
But you know what? You recognize
Yeah.
that. You recognize it now. He's 8 years old, and you start working with him now through
we
that.
talked through that, and it ended up not being a huge deal at all. We
Right.
talked about it at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that's refreshing, though, because you realize, you've got to take a moment to stop and realize, okay, every kid is going to have their thing. They're going to struggle with something. And being able to identify that, like in your case, okay, he cares about what people think, and he's kind of got that little thing. It might seem like such a trivial thing, but you're aware, and you're going to work through it. And just make each experience a learning lesson.
You make me feel better because I think I worry about it still.
Well, no, you should. But we should, as parents, we should worry about it.
I'm all reading articles everywhere.
And
you know what? And that's competent.
And that's good. That's not a bad thing. But you can turn so many experiences into lessons. And that's something that I need to remind myself constantly because I am not a super parent.
I am not either. You
hard.
can play the computer for another 2 hours. Sure. I'm bad.
You're not bad. You're not bad. But
I'm not, though. See, that's another thing. I'm like, I know there's scientific evidence, but I'm also like, do we think that's bad because that's what society tells us?
Right, exactly.
Or is it, so I have to start thinking things like, I'm not a bad mom. You're not a bad mom. You love your kids. They know you love them, and you provide for their needs and show them love.
Exactly. You're doing the best you can. And the fact that you even worry about that, like, oh, shoot, if I already screwed my kids up, you care. You know what I mean?
Having my husband in the job he is, especially when he did juvenile prosecution, the stuff he would come home and tell me, I'm like, okay, our kids will be okay.
Yeah.
Because there are some shitty parents out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of it's a cycle.
I know.
And then they never had a chance. And then their parents never had a chance. And then there's just people that just conscientiously may be making these silly decisions.
Yeah, it's true.
But if anybody has it all figured out, if anybody thinks they're a master and everything, feel free to reach out because we'd love to have you on.
I want to meet you too.
Yeah. But we just have to do our best.
It's true.
But honestly, Ashley, just keep being you and open and honest with yourself and people because it is so refreshing.
Well, thank you. It's almost like a I can't help myself kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know why. I just feel like I'm supposed to talk about it, so I do.
Well, that's good because a lot of people can benefit from it and realize they're not alone in a lot of these things. So,
well, I'll tell you, when you're more open, you learn things about people. So I know a lot of things about a lot of people.
Because they become more vulnerable being around you.
Yeah.
Is that hard? Do you tend to, are you empathetic and take on a lot of other people's stresses? When people share a lot about themselves and trials they go through, do you feel a weight on your shoulders? I'm just curious.
Only time I do is if it has to do with kids. Like hard things kids are going through, that's hard for me.
Right.
Other than that, I've never even thought about that. There's not a lot of, of course, like terrible things.
Right.
Yeah, like my sister-in-law has stage 4 stomach cancer. it just pains me to think about it. You know what I mean?
And does she have little kids?
She has 4 kids. And her and my brother-in-law have only been married for 3 months.
Oh.
Like they're newlyweds. Yeah.
And she was diagnosed
like
after the
3 weeks ago or
Oh.
something. Yeah. But I mean, like if someone's telling me the depression they're going through and stuff like that, I mean, yeah, I feel sad for them and
Right.
sorry for
And
them.
you're there to listen.
But I'm more like, look, if you get help, like this can get better. It doesn't need to be this bad, you know?
So you're a cheerleader, you're an advocate for these people.
I try,
clearly.
but I mean, not everybody takes that advice. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that's another thing with mental health. I mean, they say this about drug addicts and things like you can't make somebody get help. You know, it's the same thing with mental illness. Like you can't make somebody get help. They have to get there on their own.
Yeah.
So
They have to want to.
they have to want to get
receive the
better
help.
for sure. Because
And that can be hard because in order to
stigma.
want it, yes, very much so. And in order to want the help, you have to recognize you need the help.
Yeah.
And that is a hard thing,
That's
is
like-
admitting you need the help.
That's why I feel like it was so liberating to get the diagnosis, because I feel like 75% of the problem is not knowing what is going on in your head. So if you
And then
know,
you think it's you. Like something's wrong with you. It's in your control. But you have your diagnosis and you know what it is and it's out of your control.
that
but
being
there's help.
said, there are still things in your control. Like, because a lot of things are behavior patterns and thought patterns that you have to like retrain yourself not to think a certain way, kind of
Right.
thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're getting deep.
We are. But it's just, I mean, it's going to be a lifelong journey.
For sure.
And just every day's a new day and one day at a time. And
Some days I just gotta lay in my bed and watch trash TV because my brain needs a break.
that is okay. There's no
I know.
shame in that.
I'm okay with it. I used to not be because I cared what people thought.
Right.
Now I'm like, yeah, let's watch crap.
And it's nobody's business but yours.
That's right.
One last question before we wrap this up. The first 10 years of your marriage, great, lots of ups and downs, but we've talked a lot about the last 10 years.
Yes.
What do you envision for the next 10 years?
Next 10 years.
What do you want for the
I
next
would
10 years?
like, okay, so I do hair and I've worked from home for the last 7 years, and starting in a week from Monday, I'm going to start working in a salon again. And I want to just be successful. I've come to realize and decide, like, you know, we make enough money, but I want to help people more. I want to be able to help people. And you can't do that if you don't make some more money.
Right.
So, and I don't need to be like a millionaire in a mansion. I just want to be comfortable enough to be able to help other people.
Have a little extra to give out to others.
And whether that's fine, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'll meet somebody that can't afford to go to a psychiatrist. Things like that. You know what I mean? So I hope in 10 years.
Just over the next 10 years.
Yeah, I go work at the salon and I double my clientele. I mean, I have a decent clientele, but I need to get more. I don't know. I have a client that's a business person, a woman, and we get along great. And so she's always like, let's open a salon together. And I'm like, I would do it with you.
You should.
So who knows?
I can envision, because you're very creative, you're very artsy, and we didn't even touch on that. But I could envision a pretty cool salon. Very
they don't
cool
have
vibe.
what I envision in my head doesn't exist in Flagstaff.
You need to make it happen.
We'll see.
You're a go-getter.
I think I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I just care what people think, so I've not done it.
Okay, here's a challenge. Continue to work on not caring what people think, and I know that's a process because I'm currently working through that myself, and I think we all need to. Do it, Ashley.
I will. I've got
You
other
really
ideas
should.
too, other business ideas that
Well,
I just need to do.
But you're very creative, and I've always loved when I've gone to your homes. I love how you decorate, and it's just a good vibe there.
Thanks.
But I can imagine it being a very welcoming and just posh
I hope.
salon.
Yeah.
So do it.
I will. I
You
will.
really should.
I feel like this is my year, and from here on out, like, I want to be different. I want to be a different person. So not completely, but
Right.
yeah. time for me to take charge of my life.
Well, exactly. And this is an exciting time because your littlest is in kindergarten now, and you've been able to be home with them and do some hair and stuff on the side. And you're still going to be a mom. That's number one. Your kids will always be number one. But Ashley, this is your time too. You've got a lot of time for you, and you run with it.
I'm going to.
Great things ahead.
I'm scared, but it's what I'm supposed to do. You have to take the plunge, right? I'm doing it. Yeah.
That's exciting. Cool. Yeah. Well, we'll have to have you back, and you can give us the update.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Ash. All right, Jeff, we're done.